This is a production of Cornell University.
Hi. So you guys are all about to go into finals, is that right? I was kind of I'm impressed that you're here. Thank you. And I got a total load of crap dumped on me when I left the farm today because we're all planting trees. So we can all just be glad that we're in this little cocoon together for an hour. How many of you have heard of the Fingerlike Cider House? Or let me start with, how many have you been to the Fingerlike Cider House? Okay, cool. How many have you heard of Good Life Farm? Aha, that is a utter failure. Let me just say, of the cider house. So I'm going to start with that at that point. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. So my name is Melissa Madden. I graduated from Cornell in 2004, and I was the whatever you guys are calling that position now, the organic farm coordinator at Cornell from 2008 to 2011. Right, Betsy? Yeah. And during that time, my husband and I bought our farm. We had spent a number of years apprenticing for other people, and just kind of in 2007, something kind of like, so that doesn't actually sound that long, from 2004 to 2007, we're like, we're done working for other people. We can't possibly do this another minute longer. And we're both really lucky to get really good jobs that were not like apprenticeships in agriculture anymore. My husband was originally very well trained carpenter, and he became the production manager at Snug Planet, which you've heard of as like a great revolution in energy efficiency for housing in Tompkins County. And I got the job that Betsy now has. And that was really pivotal for us because we were immediately able to get loans and buy a piece of land. So we spent a lot of time looking for a farm. A lot of time is like super relative. Like I was 24 or 25 and he was 21. And so like every month that went by felt like a greater emergency. So we came back from an apprenticeship in December of 2007, applied for these jobs, like somehow miraculously got them by January of 2008, and then by March of 2008 we had an offer on a piece of property, and we were like, that took so long, oh my God, like what were we, like, oh, this is just agonizing, we need to start farming right now. And then the funny thing was, this is the land we bought. So this is not on our property. So there was no infrastructure at all, and it took till June to close. We put an offer in March and it took till June to close. And we put a little yurt here. Those of you who've been there maybe have heard of it or seen it, but it's kind of across this little creek, so we had to we felled some trees and built a bridge. And then by the time we closed, like this entire farm was planted to conventional wheat and soybeans. So that was it for us for the year of having any control over our property, which was like a really interesting and difficult experience because we were coming at it with these extreme, I would say, views about the way we wanted to manage land and the changes that we wanted to see. And the reason I'm kind of making so much fun of our sense of time is that it's been, over the past 10 years, like expanded and expanded because we wanted to have a permaculture paradise. So, more hands. Who knows what permaculture means? Does anyone care to offer a definition? I certainly am not an expert, and I kind of started forgetting what I usually say about it. So, does anyone else want to throw something out there?
Well, it is agriculture that is based on perennial-based agriculture. So the crops that you grow there grow back every year, and you manage those. Or they're like trees or things like that don't die back.
Yeah, I love writing, so I'm gonna. So actually, there's like two things going on there. There's the concept, and then there's the tools, right? And what you just said, I would personally say is a tool, which is perennial agriculture. Do you know what the concept is that goes with that?
No, that's all I know.
Well, that's the most common interpretation of permaculture. Anyone else want to take a stab at it? I'm not like, I hope you don't feel like I just shot you down. I made a mistake once when I first met my husband. I was giving a talk on soil science, and we were brainstorming, and he said something that I thought was wrong, and I said no to him in front of the entire room, and I can't believe we got married. But anyway, so I won't do that, I promise. Does anyone want to take a stab? These are really important for me, so yeah.
Can you make a general definition of the design approach for
Design approach for what was sustainable?
sustainable human habitation?
Yeah, thank you. That's the big overarching one, right? I'm just going to say life. And then there's three kind of like little things that we like to say. Does anyone know what they are? They're very codified in the permaculture lexicon. So earth care. And this is, I had a very embarrassing moment where I forgot one of them. Fair share. And people care. Does anyone disagree with me? Did you have your hand up? Okay. So I think this is where like a lot of permaculturalists end up, is that this is a really direct line in terms of tools. And one thing I'm excited to talk about is how once your business gets more mature, you actually maybe start to feel like you can address these things, these other two things. But this is definitely where we started. So if you can imagine, we're like camping, basically living in a yurt, which we still live in 10 years later, which is a problem under this, which is like you should have a house after 10 years. So we were watching this farming system that we like very vehemently disagreed with, right? Like has anyone heard of Cayuga Pure Organics? It's not, yeah. These things pass, and then we find out how old we are, Paul. Because no, it was like hot shit, like 10 years ago. So Cayuga Pure Organics is where I met my husband, and it was a grain farm that was making really big waves in Brooktondale because they were vertically integrating in the way that older grain farms used to, processing their own grain instead of selling it to a much larger mill. And it was in Green Star, and everyone was trying to like figure out how to work with it, and I was one of the original cleaners of beans there, and you know, like Viva Taqueria would get these incredible bags of beans from us and then have to spend a lot of time pulling the rocks out because we were not that great at what we were doing originally. And so that was one of those things that in farming that way, even though that was a certified organic operation, anytime there was a rain event, like you can imagine, for most of the year, that's like a ton of exposed soil, and it can be a really distressing thing to be part of and witness and perpetuate. So I remember in 2000, so this is, for a full year, we weren't able to get like permanent ground cover on our property. And I'm not saying, like I eat annual vegetables, I eat annual grains. I'm not saying, no, I'm saying that's not how we wanted to farm. We wanted to push the boundaries as much as possible of this, because we're seeing that most of the people practicing this were practicing it on a hobby scale, definitely under 5 acres and mostly under 1 acre. And so we wanted to know if it's like an actual farming system that could be applied to a broad scale. So this is a 69-acre parcel, 45 acres of open fields and 24 acres of woods. And we felt like this was like this great blank slate. This from here to here is honeyoi soil. Does anybody know very much about that soil type? It's a state soil. Oh my God, thank you for knowing that. It's delicious, right? Like it's actually a sweet soil. It's a little bit alkaline. It's very deep and very loamy and incredibly rich. And then from here down is Cazenovia. So does anyone know anything about Cazenovia? It's still a really good ag soil. It doesn't really, nothing compares to honeyoi. But so our 2 flagship ciders are now named those 2 things. And in terms of the failure of the tasting room to tell you those things that you don't know about our farm and you don't know that stuff. So we were thinking, okay, we have this great farm. It's a really good base. We're going to show what 69 acres can do in terms of perennial agriculture. But then we had to wait a year just to plant the ground cover. So in March of 2009, there was this huge rain event, and I remember just standing outside. And so all the crops had been harvested, so there was very little residue, and there were no roots, no living roots in the ground, and very few even previous year roots. And this is like an 8% slope. Would you agree, Tom?
Probably.
From here to here, sloping down towards Cayuga Lake. And do you see these? Does anyone know what these are? Not Tom. What? Yeah, these are like the dips in the farm. Yeah, and this is where, can you see how they're, even in this time of year, which you can see this is like really early spring, how dark green they are? Like, it's amazing how much less soil is on the top of these ridges here than in these valleys here. So our big goal was to stop that right away. And I remember in March of 2009 just like totally freaking out, like standing here and watching all this topsoil go this way and being like, what do I do? Like, I want to lie down and like put some straw down, you know, like I'm a tiny little person and this is 16 acres or 69 acres and like there was nothing I could do. And then luckily by May we had gotten the whole thing planted to grass. And I ran into my friend who is a grain farmer who has spoken here, and I will not say his name, and he was so annoyed because it was like, I really wish you would have rented your farm to me while you figured your shit out. And I was like, well, it's already figured out and I know what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing, and we have saved the planet. So it was a very successful moment to plant grass. And then quickly in succession, let's see, I hope I made good. So this is what it looked like in April of 2009. And then, so you remember this. This is what it basically looks like now. I'm not like a very excellent graphic designer. This is a PowerPoint mock-up. And yeah, I see that it says 2013 on the top, but I guess what I'll say is we continue to plant trees all the way down and the entire farm is green. And I just learned that there's actually a new Google shot, so I probably should have put that in there. But basically what you can see is that the only part of our farm at this point that remains in annual tillage agriculture is right here. It's the flattest spot on the farm. It's 6 high tunnels, 5 of which are movable, so all 5 of those have 3 rotations each. And otherwise everything's covered in grass and asparagus, and we've been planting fruit trees since 2009. 2010 we planted asparagus in 2009. That was this project. That was like crazy. Like I felt like I was in a desert, right? Like just like nothing happening. And now, so this is 2010 planting trees, and that's what teamwork looks like. I just want to show you. This is part of what it looks like now. Or actually that's 2011. So those trees are much bigger. So it's green, it's covered in trees, it's got like some places where there's a little bit of tillage, and that's done with horses. And at the same time, like, do you think that we've been able to, I'm just looking for some more pictures, been able to make a living off of this farm? I see a head shaking. Some of you have already heard this from me, I think. My doom and gloom story. I've been warned not to be like too negative. So one of the problems I think you run into when you have really big ideas and you think that you in and of yourself like are a grand solution is that sometimes you can really fail here. And the one thing about this farm, I love my farm so much. At this point we raise beef cows, we have organic asparagus, organic peaches, organic apples, organic Asian pears, specialty greens, which showed you a picture of, specialty ginger, which we make into a house-made soda, and then poultry sometimes. And I like love the place that the Good Life Farm is, but the reality is that it'll be like a whole other generation before that farm is capitalized. And that I find challenging, like more challenging every year. So like one of the things I mentioned is like still living in basically a shack. And I think what a lot of people find hilarious about that is that I'll come back to these. I don't know what order, I forgot what order these. This is our building, right? And we built that ourselves. So we're like infinitely capable of actually building a home. And I think one of the things that we have constantly struggled against is in that idea that we want to make the biggest possible positive impact. We realized that we weren't able to be full-time on our own operation with everything being based in perennial agriculture. and in some ways, like I would say cows are perennial agriculture. Like we raise a cow-calf herd, so we're always working off of our own mothers only. So every year I have one new mother to add to my herd, and that means one additional cow. But ideally, like an operation that would cash flow, would be like 100 cows. Does anyone want to take a guess about how many I have in my painful years of building my herd? 18. Come on. Yeah. So it's going to be like forever, right? So we decided that we needed to vertically integrate. Did anyone here come to the Farmer Ground and Ochsner Farms talk, or have heard from them before? So those guys are two of my best friends, and they're really important mentors in my life. And I think one of the things they do for me really well is make fun of me, like all the time. And they thought this was crazy, but they also got it. But one of the things about their vertical integration, did Greg come with them? Did Farmer Ground Flour? No, okay. So there's Ochsner Farms, very well run, like one of the best run organic grain farms you're ever gonna find. Incredible crop rotation plan. Supporting the beginning of Farmer Ground Flour, which is a really high quality grain mill that is designed to source locally, especially from Ochsner Farms, and then Wide Awake Bakery, right? The difference is those are three separate businesses run by three separate owners. One of the things that we did was we tried to vertically integrate within our own operation. So at this point we've got Good Life Farm, and it is really important that that's the foundation. Every year we are able to make a little bit more of our cider from our own production, but right now we're only at 20% in a good year. And then we have a farm cidery, which actually have a farm winery license. And that is great because it means we can take these apples that we're growing organically and they look super gnarly, and also the variety is weird. Like who here, well you guys are a really unique crowd, but you know, like Yarlington Mill, Ellis Bitter, like Dabinett, these are not terribly well-known varieties, but they're great to grow in an organic system. And we, again, like going back to like not only the fact that it's perennial, but how do you want to manage your perennial agriculture? Like what do you want your rotation of inputs to be? What do you want the things that you have to purchase to be? I think that people tend to assume that permaculture farms are organic, and that seems like a natural assumption to me. I still personally think it's very important to be certified if you're practicing organic agriculture. It's not something we should be self-certifying, in my opinion, because it's really hard to do and takes a lot of attention. A lot of times people will mix biodynamics with permaculture, and I think that's also a great mix. As you can see, it's sort of silly at this point that we haven't certified biodynamic because of the integration of animals on our farm. But we don't do the preparations, so we don't do the full thing. And so we've got this farm winery, and it's justified by the existence of our farm. But in reality, in New York State, you could be a farm winery or farm brewery without producing a single piece of the commodity yourself. And apples are still considered a commodity, which in and of itself is an incredibly difficult part of the equation. So you all are familiar maybe with the Lake Ontario sort of apple belt, right? That's like, it's pretty cool up there. Anyone driven along, and just like miles and miles and miles of apple orchards. Those guys, for years, this is slowly changing because of the hard cider revolution, but like, who do you think they were selling to? Mott's. At what price? Like 85 cents, maybe 30 cents a pound. So for us to like even start to turn around, we need to charge $2 a pound. It gets a little better when we just use it in-house, and then it gets a lot better when we turn it into alcohol and put it in a bottle, which is not very earth-friendly at all, and sell it. And that is the beautiful thing. The problem is that most cideries are making their apples out of the previous construct that I just mentioned, which is like extremely cheap fruit and not very high quality fruit. So there's like this messaging going on about cider being awesome and farm related, and of course like cider is farm related. It's at some point comes from an apple, maybe, except for the ones that didn't, right? They're made from malic acid and all this kind of weird stuff, and you can read that right on the ingredients on the bottle, so I don't need to like mention any names. But there's a lot of cideries making cider with really cheap fruit and dressing it up really well. And that is, if you come into the Fingerlike Cider House, like, I hope that you're going to get some glimpse of what we're trying to do, which is stand for the farms, whatever. There's a variety of stages. So I'm just going to like kind of pedal back and say, what is the Fingerlike Cider House? Specifically, it's the tasting room that you most of you have been into. And it's a tasting room for Good Life Cider, which is from Good Life Farm, which is not an estate cidery, right? We are not 100% our own fruit, but it's very important to us to be working towards that, which is why my crew is at home planting 900 more trees right now. And they're like, you are leaving. What are you doing? And there's 3 other cideries in there. Redbird Orchard, has anyone heard of them? Eric is the Cornell Orchards manager here at Cornell, and he owns Redbird Orchard Cider. They're the smallest. Black Diamond Cider, everyone's heard of them? Ian Merwin was a professor of pomology here until 2013. And Eve Cidery, anyone heard of them? So she's actually the person that I met in 2000 when I discovered that farming was cool, because I worked for her. And at that time, I didn't realize she was like almost my age. She was 21 and I was 19, and I was like, you're amazing, you're ageless, like, who are you? And I feel really lucky because she's been my mentor since 2000 and has been making cider that entire time. So she actually qualifies as one of the longest running sort of method champenois cideries in the country, and is very nationally recognized for her quality, and struggles enormously to get the price that she needs to get for her cider. It's crazy. And so she's 75% her own fruit. So between the 4 of us, that's the story we're trying to tell in the Cider House. And the Cider House is its own like super conundrum of like, collaboration is awesome, but not if the risk isn't shared. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about that has been very confusing. But what I keep coming back to is like, if we're trying to support small family farms who are truly producing their own fruit and paying like a lot of attention to like, what is the microbial makeup on the skin of this fruit, and how is it going to make our cider really interesting and really delicious, we have to be telling our story as loudly as some of our competitors who have a marketing budget and a marketing person and who are not paying almost anything for juice. So I think everybody showed us a lot of, in 2014 when we presented the idea to those other cideries, they showed us a lot of faith, because we were saying like, look, our farm is a great place for this. We can build the building, we can find the funding, which is crazy that we did. And we will run the tasting room for all of us on all of our behalfs. And over that time, it's become really clear to my husband and I don't know if you heard in my story so far, is there any background in hospitality? Did I mention any background in hospitality? No, we had no idea what we were getting into. It was crazy. We were just like sure that we could do it. And I was talking to Stefan last night actually, and it's funny because I told him I was coming here and he didn't tell me he'd given a talk. Of course, I was just like, Stefan, my head is scrambled, like help me, what should I say? Here's what he told me to say. He said, ask me about my business. Ask me what inspires me, ask me what terrifies me, and then see what happens. And I haven't done that yet, but that's kind of where I'd like to leave it at this point and open it up to questions. And I hope we can have the rest of this be. And I didn't really do my slideshow. I'm not really concerned with my slideshow at this point. Like, whatever. I'll go through the rest of the pictures if you want me to. But I would love to just talk to you guys, and I hope I kind of laid out what our businesses are. Paul, thank you.
I know a lot of people who are around the point in their farm career that you're in, inspiration starts to wear thin. So I guess what I want to know is, you can know what inspired you at the beginning, but what had to change. What's your inspiration now?
Also, because you ran into me at 4 o'clock and asked me how I was doing, and I was like, just kidding. That's a great question. Thank you. This continues to be what inspires me. This is a picture of my cow herd being followed by my turkey flock. And I feel really, really strongly about the kind of agriculture we're doing. And I feel really, really well educated about how expensive it is to do it. This is my original cow herd. There were 3 animals in it, and 2 of them were female and 1 of them we ate. And so this is like, yay, yay. Obviously, I bought a couple more moms. I didn't, 2012, get to 18, just my own breeding. But I feel like, so this gives me a chance to say, like, people often ask me, like, oh, did you go to Cornell for farming? And I'm sorry, Tom, but I'm always like, no, I definitely didn't, because when I was an undergrad here, I took the class that I took that resonated the most with me was Tom Whitlow's class. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's my old advisor, and he's here, and he's my dear friend. Please raise your hand. Thank you. He teaches a class called Restoration Ecology, and that was where I was at for my entire career as a student here. Was much more interested in like the natural world than the agricultural world. And at the same time, every summer I was working on farms. I worked on Remembrance Farm, I worked at Stick and Stone, I worked for not Indian Creek, sorry. They don't own it anymore. The sister farm to Indian Creek that is no longer sister farm. Anyway, where Autumn was. What? No, in Newfield, on Schaefer Road. Like the James Cummins started, but anyway. It's not called Eve Cidery, sorry. And all that whole time I was thinking, like, this is fun, but it's not a thing. Like, people don't make their money this way, and they don't make a living this way. And certainly, like, the people I was working for were either still working full-time jobs off farm or part-time jobs or just struggling. And those farms have all evolved to be like full family operations at this point. But I never really thought agriculture. I just always thought like restoration or conservation. And I think it was finding out about permaculture that really turned that corner for me. And then getting in lots and lots of arguments with grain and vegetable farmers about what jerks permaculturalists could be. Because I would say like 10 years ago, the movement was in a different place and it was a lot more antagonistic. And I think there's a much better recognition from the permaculture side about the value of these small organic farms. And I feel really lucky, Paul, that I have my animals to wake up to every morning, because what has evolved, and I would say yes, my inspiration has worn thin because I've turned into like a master administrator. I do all the marketing, I do all the staff management. I have 17 employees. I used to have one. I find the money, I spend the money, I account for the fact that we have no money. And luckily, I still have livestock. That's like my main thing, is like I have to do the chores. So in the morning and in the evening, I'm still a farmer, whether I can afford to be a farmer in the middle of the day. And I think as we've gotten kind of pounded in the cider house by attention and our lack of experience, I keep realizing that people still tend to, but maybe not, because you guys have all been there and you didn't know about the Good Life Farm, but let's pretend that what I'm saying is true, and then you can tell me it's not later. The people know that they're on a working farm to some degree, and that feels different, and that they see that we treat our place like with a lot of reverence. And I think it tends to be like one of the best educational experiences a lot of people can have, which is why we have this festival, which is a Memorial Day weekend, and you're all welcome to come. It's called Asparaganza, and we've been having it for 6 years because we planted 2 acres of asparagus, which is a lot. If you're curious, it is 4 miles of walking if one person has to harvest it by themselves. So we never do that, ever. I used to, and I remember like I had a mental breakdown once in the middle of it, and I walked away. And so now it's like a 4 to 5 person thing. And yeah, I think what I need to do better to keep myself happy is be out there like giving farm tours and explaining this to people, so that proportion of hand raising, let's do it again. Who knew about the Fingerlike Cider House? Okay, and before this, who knew about the Good Life Farm? Okay, well, I feel like it was like different. I really do. I feel like you're all cheating. It seemed to me like it was like half. I think we need to do a better job with that, because we want to connect people to like the quality of what they're tasting, to something that's real and something they can support. And that's like an incredible capitalist construct, right? Like that we would use our dollars, our purchasing dollars, to make things better for people. And at the same time, like in the cider house, it is totally true for us. Like it has totally worked out that way. So Yeah, I don't, did that answer your question or not? Do you want to ask it again?
No, well, you wanted me to ask you what inspired you.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I did.
But no, I don't want to.
Okay, yeah.
You had a picture of it somewhere, a slide of you with your horses. So I was wondering if you could tell people what your motivation to have horses for Ithaca and for other here.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, I feel like it was, so from 2009 to May of last year, so not quite a year, we did not have a tractor. And for a long time that was fine. This is how we moved grain, really big quantities of grain for our turkeys, and we moved our turkeys all over the farm. So this is like their feeding vessel. And then on the days I would move it, I would load it up behind, like in between the wheels and move it. And the turkeys were like, yes, this is so great. We are so happy about this. And you can't see it, but they actually are fenced. Like, you don't invest that much in livestock and then not fence them. They are. And so I think that was like a nice system. It was very light. And I think I started to sort of feel like everything we did was very like a light touch. One of the problems was we were also touching our compost very lightly, which meant that we weren't flipping it enough and we weren't making very nice compost. And as we started to have apple pomace coming off the presses, it was like a legitimate issue that turned into a rat problem. And then we were starting to get these bottle orders. So we made 7,500 gallons, which is nothing. Like last year, it is. How much is your son making? Not that much. Eve Cider capped out at 10,000. Redbird never makes more than 3. Black Diamond made 3, and so that would make Eve's the biggest, us the next, and the other 2 just like so much smaller, just for a proportion. Meanwhile, like, do you have any statistics on wineries in your head? That doesn't touch the wineries around here. That's not even a small winery. Like, it's just, and we're having a very hard time like getting people to recognize like a $15 to $20 price point for our product. But where the hell am I going with this? Oh, right. So the thing with always wanting to do everything the hardest possible way and the most labor-intensive possible way is at some point it gets really expensive and you can measure it. And when we started really measuring it, or like losing out on the opportunity to get really good freight rates for our bottles because we couldn't order them in a quantity because we couldn't unload them, that became an issue where we got a tractor. And at that point I started to have a separation of, I would say, direction with my husband. So at this point, the horses are my animals, and I have to make sure that they work. The thing is that did everyone experience those rainstorms last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? It was crazy. Well, I ran out of hay. My cows aren't on grass quite yet. I've been like, wait for it to get to a certain height because they'll just mow it down right away. So I had to get hay out to my cows on Friday. And the idea of driving a tractor and that is like, you're committing to ruts for the rest of your life, right? But I didn't have to do that. I was able to load it onto this sled, which is not in this picture, and get it out to the pasture and no damage done. So there's always, it's nice to have something that's 4-footed, you know, like it can get through anything. It's an animal, like it's like you can jump over a log, like they can jump over logs. So we still have legitimate jobs for them. We pulled 200 locust posts out of our woods over the past 2 months. And about half of them we pulled out with the horses. They were in a creek, you know, or like behind a tree under a bush, like really hard to get with a tractor, or way too big for a human to lift onto the tractor forks. I insist on doing the tillage, and it's like, oh, well, Melissa's doing her hobby right now, like her farm work hobby, because it's like half as efficient at this point. But the thing is, because once you have a tractor, like you're in it. Like you have a tractor, why don't you have implements for your tractor? And the lucky thing I feel like is we own no implements for our tractor. So at this point we don't have a choice, but that's one of those difficult things where he's going in one direction, I'm going the other, and I basically am like, well, they'll just be mine then, and that'll be my hobby. So I don't know, it's a little bit of a challenge. I don't know any horse farms, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that are either not split operation, which means they own a tractor and they do like their efficient stuff with tractors, or that aren't supporting that with an off-farm job. I don't know of a single one. Does anybody? Yeah. So I'm supporting it with the cider house. And it's great marketing. Yeah.
I just had a question on the cows. Are you also integrating that your cow operation?
Like into the orchards? Yes, I sell meat.
Are you slaughtering them on farm?
They are shot on, bled out on farm, and then they're butchered off farm. So that's a very specific way to do it, which is called custom cut, and means that we sign up all of our customers while they're still alive, agree on a cut sheet, and at that point, and they pay a deposit, so at that point they own the animal, and that allows us to do that, and it's a super beautiful thing. It's the only, I don't want to have 100 cows because I don't want to stop being able to do that. I really, really value the lack of transport before slaughter. So, yeah, I'm way too intimate with my cows. It's really not healthy. Yeah, do we want to see another picture of a really cute little guy? Where did he go? Yeah. They are so great when they're, and then like, this is like just born, and I'm like, hello, here I am, let me stab you, let me castrate you, let me put a tag in your ear, and then like a day later, there's no catching. Just like, cannot get a hold of them. So this is the beginning of calving season. So on our farm, like from now until the middle of June is like, it's sort of like running a sprint for the entire time. It's like planting trees, picking asparagus, selling it all, delivering it all, remembering that the tasting room is open, trying to find the calves that have been born, and often when they're born in tall grass, like we try to calve on grass. There's a lot of finding them involved, running after them, leaping and catching them, and that's like, you missed it if you're doing that, because it means they're too old. But yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So what are some of the problems you run into in the cider house because you don't have a background in?
Like everything. Haven't you been in there? Yeah, like, oh my God. So I actually texted one of my employees because she's a master's student in soil science. I was like, will you come? I like really wanted to call on her because she's been with us for 2 years. Her friend had a seminar. I think that the naivete was actually like a good thing in some ways because there was like a fresh approach. But there was also like just a lot of really dumb stuff about like, how do we take orders for food? Let's design a system. Like, not like, let's use a system that restaurants use, you know? And so like, what? So we think we're great systems thinkers, right? Like that is the entire concept in permaculture. And it's not like we totally screwed it up. It's not like we totally tried to make it up from scratch. But it was so naive and it caused us a lot of stress. And luckily, my husband and I worked every Friday and every Saturday for the first 2 years of that business. So we were there to take the heat or to fix the problem. But can you imagine what that did to us, to our farm? I mean, I worked probably 20 hours, not like managing, but like actually doing a shift. So yeah, our farm really, really suffered. And 2015 was a great fruit year. It was a really tough year for us. Like, getting things picked and remembering that like my sister came to visit in August and I was like, oh, I think that like the vivid variety of peaches is ripe and Matt is on vacation, our farm manager, and she was like, okay. I was like, well, I have to go work in the taste room for 6 hours. Can you pick it? My sister picked I mean, you know, it was just like, oh my God, like what are you thinking? Like you have to work these shifts. Like you should not think that you're a farmer the whole time you're in there. Like, be clean, be ready, and don't be stressed out about it. I think that's like probably anyone who's ever worked in a restaurant once like knows that, right? So I think it's like hilarious now, but it was enormously stressful. And I'm not saying it's fixed, but one of the things that Garrett and I realized is for us to do a good job for our employees and for our farm, like we actually can't hold those shifts anymore. So as of January, we don't work on Saturdays anymore. Ha ha. But we come in all the time and ruffle everybody's feathers. So, yeah, any other questions? Am I going over?
No, you're good.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you about like, because you were pretty, young when you started this whole thing, and can you speak a little bit to that? Because I try to imagine now, like, your husband was 21, right, when you guys bought your farm, and
right.
21 or 22, I guess. But, and what was that like? Like going into it, was there ever that thought of, you know, when being young and like how do I start this? Is this such a big thing, or buying land, or was it something you kind of knew that you wanted to do?
There are a lot of people in here who knew me at that time. So you guys can be like, yeah, you were actually kind of an asshole. But I think that we just really thought we could. And I think, honestly, so I'm 35 now, I feel like there's a lot of arrogance there. And so I used to give tours specifically to the permaculture design class, that there's one held in Ithaca every year. And I remember after one of them, like we just really got it handed to us, like constantly. Like we were just so tired and so overworked and so confused about, like, not our vision. Our vision was very clear to us, but we were confused about how to maintain the rest of our lives. Like this, I keep coming back to this because I really feel like we traded on this. And one of the things that really helped me stop trading on that, or like have a desire to stop trading on it, was to have employees and realize that like I did not want to subject them to the conditions I'd subjected myself to. And what did I want to be as an employer, especially in the tasting room, because you could see it immediately. Like if you're stressed out and you interact with a customer, like everybody's stressed out, like it's terrible. And so as I've been stepping back from the tasting room or like from working in it and trying to support my staff, like I try to treat them like they're the most important, for lack of a better way to describe it, like customer, make sure they're really happy and comfortable. And I think we were really, really naive about what we were going to need for ourselves. So we didn't manage to have children in those 10 years. All of our friends have at this point. And I'm not saying we're not going to, but I think, I feel like we made a big trade. And it's really clear to me at this point what it was. And I don't know that I would do it again. I'm not trying to make this like sound terrible. But I don't think you have to make those trades if you're not so silly about some things. One thing that would have been a lot easier, like to go back to this, is to buy a piece of land with like any building on it, like at all. Like a barn. Like there wasn't water, there wasn't a driveway. Like, you know, we were like, we can do it. And Garrett was like, I'm a builder, so like I don't want other people's mistakes. And we were like, great, like okay, it's all great. So, you know, like it's not like this house was even for sale or available, and we didn't like turn that opportunity down. But most of the other farms we looked at, like at some point we were like, we're not going to look at farms with buildings anymore because that's stupid. Like, why would we do that? He's like, I don't want to renovate. So I think that was foolish, like definitely, not having a place to live that was stable. But is that what the question you asked me? I think that was like really the biggest mistake. We still don't have a place to live. And also, unfortunately, like this was designed to be our home. It's the third floor of this building. And we run into some really funny things with the code officers. So like, oh that's my sister. She comes and works. She doesn't work for me. She just comes and does what I tell her. And that's Garrett's brother, by the way. So one of the things I think I've been remiss in not mentioning, sorry, maybe I should try to get through my slides, is what a family operation we are. Don't worry about my slides.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Okay, well, that's Garrett on that side, matching. And that's his brother. And so his family, he's from Dryden, his family does live on our farm now. So we built our barn, and then he built his mother a house, his mother and his stepfather, and they're at the bottom of our farm. And then his brothers worked for us on and off almost every year since we started, and now he's our cider maker, and he's really good at it. And it's funny because I have known Jimmy now since he was 18, and I would not have told you 10 years ago that he was going to be a really good, like, award-winning cider maker. But that's like, you know, we kind of try to remind people that we live in this society where there's a lot of truths, and then there's a lot of partial truths used as marketing, and like what is this place, and like what is true about this place. And I think that people tend to be very inspired by family operations that are truly family, and I feel really lucky to have the Millers as part of our operation. His stepfather is a master electrician, so like today I was like, I need a stove wired in tomorrow. Like, I decided to do this event, we don't have the right equipment. Like, I found the stove, but I don't know how to wire it. And like, can you come do it? And he's like, yeah, okay. Like, I'll do that for you. So, you know, that's one of the nice things. And I think we did know getting into that we would have some level of support like that. But I think we actually had no idea the kind of support we were going to get. It has been amazing. I would say, like Stefan and Tor, like the number of people that have like randomly showed up for us and said, like, we think what you're doing is cool, and we also see that you are ridiculous, and we would like to help you in some way or another. Our bank, I don't know if anyone has seen our commercial, but have you seen? Yeah, so now we're the poster children for Tompkins Trust because it looks successful, right? On the outside, definitely people are like, you're successful. I'm like, no, like maybe we'll talk about that in 15 years. But we're a really big client of Tompkins Trust, and they wanted a heteronormative couple for their commercial. I mean, yeah, definitely. And then it turned out they kept interviewing me, and I have like a really bad speaking voice on recordings. I sound like I'm in a hole. And I was like, you should really interview Garrett. He's much more interesting. And they were like, no. And I was like, why? And they're like, we want a woman. I was like, oh, well, I got it. So we have a commercial, and that's me talking, and it's embarrassing. But it's very, very beautiful. I thought they did a great job. So these are the kind of things. And I think they didn't like pay us for that, but I feel like they must give us every loan we ask for at this point. How could they say no? Right? So anyway, let's see what else we got. That's Ellen, my sister. Yeah, fun. So this is what it looks like inside the tasting room. We do a lot of events like this. You can't really see this, but one of the things we're trying to do is we started out 2 years ago serving 100% local, which means there were like significant spices missing from our menu, like black pepper. And there was a really funny article written in Tasting Table about us not using black pepper. And I was like, that's what you got from your experience here? It's like the same thing, like Forbes came and they wrote about the bathroom. And I was like, what? Like, you wrote about the bathroom? So, you know, it's like our messaging, right? Like you have to constantly, and I would say that's another thing that we had no idea, like how you can't talk openly to the press. You must have a message and you must repeat it like 5 ways, you know. And so one of the things we're trying to do is serve our food and our friends' food that they grow. And we want to be a good customer to other farms, but we also really want to elevate the fact that like Finger Lake's food is amazing. And we are trying to put Finger Lakes on the map for cider and for food the way Napa is on the map for wine. Like that is what we're trying to do. And that is the purpose of the tasting room and of any event that we have that's food pairings. So I feel like I needed to say that. Any other questions? Yes, hi.
You focus on nutrient density of like fruits, vegetables, and environments of the land, and appreciation and cultivation of the beauty of the land. And I'm only curious if you've ever spoken with or visited that involves operation.
We haven't been there. It's really silly at this point. Do you want to say something about it?
No,
I would love for you to.
No, I've listened to them speak twice now, and I just, every time I see your response to what you do, I'm a fan. I think I'm reminded, you talked about inputs from mechanical inputs versus using a tractor versus using chemicals, and he talks about that too. He talks about using machines, you know, precisely when needed, and then just
Right.
when appropriate. And just food is medicine and beauty is everything. Yeah.
So when he wrote a book, I don't remember the name of it, do you?
Whole systems design.
Right, so he is a current permaculture star. I believe, I could be wrong, that we share an inspiration, which is New Forest Farm in Viola, Wisconsin, which is where Garrett and I spent 2007. And that was the first broad-scale permaculture operation that we could find. It was 100 acres on this basically ridge and valley, like the driftless area of Wisconsin, if you're familiar with this, like the lower western part of Wisconsin. And it's these huge valleys and these huge ridges. And it's totally farmed for, like it's totally plowed, even though these are extremely steep slopes. And what Mark would say, the owner of that farm, is that it was where the NRCS wrote the book on like contour plowing. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he says, and it's a great point. So he has been trying to replace corn with a hybrid chestnut and soy with hazelnuts, because originally that area was a savanna. And when I used to give presentations on the Good Life Farm, I'd actually spend like 10 minutes talking about New Forest Farm, because the challenge that he was facing was he's up against how many years of corn and soybean breeding, right? And he's trying to breed food crops on his own dime, not supported by, you know, the government, any schools, and somehow compete against that industry. And that's like one of those things is like, so we were living at his farm 15 years in. So I'm telling you, we live in a shack. They still didn't have a house, you know, and he had 2 kids. And so I feel like that was like fairly traumatizing for me. Actually, it was like you guys seem kind of unhappy, even though you're so inspired and inspiring. And now they're 25 years in and they have dealt with some of those things. But that farm is still like, it's basically a test concept in a lot of ways. And it's a really important one. And I think he's an elder in the permaculture movement at this point, Mark Shepard. And he wrote a really beautiful book that I cannot remember the name of, but I would look it up. And so it was like we came away from that being like, okay, so the idea is good and the implementation is incredibly difficult. We shouldn't be doing any breeding. We should be growing agriculturally recognized crops. So that's how we ended up with the perennial crop layout that we have: asparagus, fruit crops. Like much more like those go to market in a really straightforward way, right? Even if they go as cider. But yeah, I think, I don't know, you made me feel like I should have mentioned Mark earlier. Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? I'm totally just like ping pong, like random, whatever. Should we see if there's any more slides I missed? Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, so this is the farm in 2013. These trees are much bigger. Those are Asian pears. And this is, again, the inside of the cider house. It's a really strange font. Yeah, that got cut off. Is it time? Am I done? No one has any questions?
Melissa, how do you market your ginger?
Directly, for the most part. I've had so many I've had a number of big ideas that have truly failed, actually. And one of them was this collaborative CSA that we were running, and it was the same idea as the food we serve in the cider house, which was like, someone could join our CSA and get a full diet, because I was working with all these other farms, but they were such small producers, we couldn't get a low enough price to put our margin on it to run that. So that was 2 years of really big challenge, and one of the things it generated for me was a really incredible marketing list. So between direct marketing turkeys, which was really easy for years and years, and running the CSA Plus, I sell like 400 or 500 of my pounds of ginger in 1 to 10 pound units directly to people. And then, I mean, we grow 3,000 pounds, so the rest of it I wholesale. And we buy a fair amount of it. And I'm not allowed to open this, like Cornell's, all kinds of regulations. But I did bring this to share with you guys, and this is our house-made soda. We use about 300 pounds of our own ginger a year for this. Yeah. And then we make these shrubs, which you can also have. These are for you. These are to look at. A shrub? Who just asked that? You? A shrub is a very old drink, actually, and it's related to sherbet. So my understanding is that it's Middle Eastern in origin, and it's a way of preserving fruit and vegetables by macerating them in vinegar and then straining like the particulate back out and using it as a mixer. And so it's very vinegary. We sell it as a cocktail, and this is one of those fun things about Governor Cuomo. He's been great for craft beverage and also like a little confusing, maybe you agree with me. He's done this thing where like any farm blank can serve any other farm blank product. So what you're going to start seeing on the wine trails now is like, where am I? Like, who made this stuff? You know, that's how I feel about it. But at the same time, we're going to probably start selling vodka and gin in the shrubbery, because we have a shrubbery, which is a cooler where we sell shrubs. And we probably aren't going to serve cocktails because I don't want to go there, but it's mostly a really nice cocktail mixer. And a lot of people also, when they are quitting drinking, buy it so that they can have something fancy to drink with their friends who are drinking alcohol. So, yeah.
Melissa, are you still doing the CSA?
No. No. Because the CSA that we were doing of 100% our own products was a spring CSA, so March, April, and May, because we have all of these tunnels, like 6 of them, and this is what we produce. But the thing was that even with that much of our own production, like, there was still so much unpredictability in terms of what's going to bolt, and you're going to, like, all of a sudden have nothing for the CSA this week, which was always very stressful, and it always happened at the end of April. And I was like, why did I do this? Like, I'm so dumb. And so we just went back to wholesaling our greens. Super straightforward. But I think that the thing about the CSA was, like, we would do you pick strawberries at the very end of it. People, like, loved coming to our farm, and that's a really important thing that I'm still trying to figure out how to offer that. And I think that the cider house is a great vehicle for that, and it can justify it in a way that, as a farmer, just being a good host can be very, very difficult, because you're like, I'm wasting my time, like, literally right now, you know. Whereas with the cider house, like, being a good host is an imperative part of that job, and it's been a helpful shift for me. So I have this vision, and I only did it once this year. We had a orchard with sale in January, where I was like, come, whatever, drink, I don't care, but I'm going to be out driving my horses in circles, and I'm going to give your kids rides on my sled. And it was so much fun. And it actually did turn into people wanting to go in and drink in the cider house. And I think that's a nice place to, like, back off and not try to exert control, which is kind of what we do at Asparagans. It's like, you can come and spend no money, and that's, like, totally fine. We want you to appreciate what we're doing here, and we want you to have fun, and we want you to be safe. So we're going to control that. And then what tends to happen is people are like, I like this place, and I think what you do is special, and sometimes I can afford to spend money here and sometimes not. So, like, yeah. Whereas if you're only selling if you only sell ginger, like, you're only going to ever get people who really, really get ginger, which is a really small segment of society. A lot more people get alcohol, turns out. So, yeah. Any other questions? I feel like you were trying to, like, get up and stop me.
No, I wasn't getting up to stop you.
Oh.
We're room till 6. If there are other questions, please feel free. Otherwise, I'd just like to thank Melissa again for coming. I know this is a very busy time of year for you, and again, for people who came in late, really happy you came in for the last talk of the semester for us. Dillman Hill is going to have other events going on. There's actually a mushroom event happening coincidingly right now, so there's probably some people out in the sunshine, but again,
right now?
Yeah. It's a different group, but yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, we have some tea and cake in the back. And
tea.
Please feel free to hang out for a bit. And,
I'm going to put the ginger beer back there, and you guys can serve
yeah,
yourselves.
Absolutely. But please help me thank Melissa for coming today.
Cool. Yeah, no problem.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.